All right, let's do some typography updates to the self-introduction design. I'm looking at a recent version of my self-introduction. This is the link updates version. I'm going to fork this version to make a new copy, and I will call this typography updates. So we're looking for things that we can do to the typography that improve it from a typographical design standpoint, paying attention to the principles that we have reviewed. This is not so much about creating fonts, assigning fonts to the design. We'll do that elsewhere in another activity. Right now, it's taking a look at the way the type exists now, and how can we make the typographic design more accessible, more legible, and more aligned with the mood and the theme of the layout. So first thing I'm going to do is take a look at this splash element. My lead element is dark background, and I've got all the text in a certain color. I actually think that I can improve the typographic design by taking the small text, the email and the phone number, and making it bigger to make it more visual, and to use a font that is not serif. So I'm just going to use the same font as the title, because it's hard to read. and when you think about this this design element here, it's all about seeing and having the elements come to me, the viewer, and it's not about me having to go into anything and look at it too closely. So this text in this default serif style and at this default size is not lined up with that. So I'm going to go into the code and just modify that. Let's see, here's the color. I'm just going to go to the style, and in fact, I'll just copy this font family Arial. I'm just going to copy it and make that email and phone number also sans serif, and then I'm going to make it all bigger. So this is font size 3. I don't think I quite need that that large of a font size for the email, but I will change it to, say, let's see, 1.6. Let's see what that looks like. 1.6, it's okay. It's maybe a little too big. Don't want it to compete with my title. 1.4, better. 1.3. Maybe 1.2. Let's apply that to the phone number also. Okay, so that's better. What else can I do? I wonder if the underline is even necessary. Here I've taken it off, and I think it's more readable actually as a result. Text decoration none is my go-to style. I'm going to add that to both the email and the phone number. And now that I've gotten rid of that line, it's much more visible. It's still a link. It's still acting as a link, but the line is not there. And I think that's actually what I need to do to this. So here's that. I'm going to make a note. So I'm going to start a comment tag at the top and make a note of what I've done. Typographic design updates. Okay, let's keep going. For these, I'm going to leave these, I'm going to leave all these serif because it's fine. I don't know if it's the greatest solution, but it's fine. I want to make everything a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go into the div that all of this text on beige is located in this div. And let's see what happens when I add font size 1.2 em to the div. You notice everything gets bigger. All of it got bigger. And that's a time saver. I do think it's more legible when it's bigger like this. So I'll leave that. What if I also set the line height to 1.2 em? Let's say 1.5. I was actually trying to type 1.4, but 1.5 came out. All right. So I've added 1.5 line height and 1.2 font size to the div that's holding all of this text. And those two properties, those two rules are now being applied to all of the text. And I think it makes this text more readable. Okay, so I'll make a note. All right. One thing that I'm going to do now, one additional thing is that I noticed that my sections are 3 favorite websites, 3 most used websites, 3 artists, favorite things to do, and the thank you. They're all set off by this blue type, and I think the logic is fine, the visual logic is fine, although I think the design could be improved if there was more spacing to set off the fact that these are independent sections. Right now it's just color, it's not spacing. I want to use color and spacing together to increase the visual readability of the organization here. So I'm going to take a look at these blue headers, 3 favorite websites. It's an H3. So all of these blue headers are H3s. And if I look down here in my CSS, here's where the H3 is defined as blue. I'm going to add something to this. Margin dash top. I'm going to say 1.3 em. And look what happens. A little bit of space gets added to the top, to the area above this blue headline. And I think I can add even more. Let's say 2. Let's see what happens when I set it to 2. You see all that space that's been created here? It's making this whole, all these sections more readable. Maybe I'll take margin bottom minus 0.05 em. All right. So what I did on the H3, which is my blue text, is I added 2 em units of space above the blue text, and I reduced by half an em space the space on the bottom underneath the blue text. So the blue text is now tighter with the brown text content that it belongs to, and there's more space above. And now I'm really starting to see, all right, these two belong together, and they're separate from these two, and they're separate from these two elements, and they're separate from these 2 elements. So I can really see that. Maybe I'll even add a little bit more. Let's see if I go 2.5. And let's tighten that up. There we go. Okay. So if you can see here now, this this section, this light background section, is now much more visual, right? Because these sections, the blue and the brown, work together. They work better together because of the way we're controlling the space. And maybe one thing I'll do is that since these blue labels are definitely the headers for different content sections, I'm going to change this thank you to something that's not blue, just so that it looks a little bit different. It is an H3, so structurally it's following that same logic. But in terms of my content, it doesn't have the same kind of content as the others. So I'm going to set the color to be a green, and I'm going to add this little piece, exclamation point important, and that is going to tell the code to take this rule and override any other rules that might be applying related to color to this H3. So, oh, it's blue. Oops, my bad. Now it's green. Okay, so now it visually has a different color to mark its different function, and I think that works. Maybe I'll make it a little bit darker, since this layout doesn't have a whole lot of bright color going on for it. All right. So there, I've made some typography updates, and it improves the design by making all the elements more visible and more visually organized.